Brilliant. Thank you. And Delphine, if we could just ask you to tell us briefly what happened to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here and yeah, for hearing my story. So I had quite a, I suppose, radical reversion back to my Catholic faith in, I want to say, December of 2019. So it was 2020 that I was really starting to explore my faith again and understand things. And I was starting to get a lot more interested in, for example, the pro-life movement and just understanding things from a more objective angle. I had been in the women's magazine industry working for publishing houses such as Condé Nast and Hearst, so a lot of the big titles, for about 12 years at this point. And I think when you're in that environment, you don't necessarily get given all of the facts, and you sometimes just get a little bit taken with the ideology of tolerance and not really understanding what the truths are. So I think for me, when I was really starting to dig a little bit deeper into the pro-life movement and understanding what abortion actually is and how it harms women, I felt quite passionate about it. And also with my Catholic faith, there are a few stories that I didn't want to do any longer, such as stories to do with IVF or other things to do with sexuality. And that at first, when I was still a full-time member of staff, was fine. I think at first my Christianity or my conversion back to Christianity was quite welcomed. I was asked to write an Easter newsletter, for example, for about 10,000 members of staff to read. And having had a lot of training about inclusivity and equality and belonging, diversity, I really did think that my views would be accepted and welcomed and at least listened to. And as a journalist as well, I really hoped that we welcomed democracy and hearing other people's opinions. However, around 2022, this was when I was a little bit firmer in my faith and more in understanding things and sharing a few things as well. At this point, I had moved to an organization, a Christian legal advocacy organization, and I was learning even more of the injustices that some of the pro-life movement face. And there was that real profile case with Isabel Vaughan Spruce for being arrested for praying silently within a buffer zone. So at this point, I had actually chosen to take voluntary redundancy from my publishing house because I was already feeling there was a little bit of conflict with being a journalist and really trying to live out my faith. However, my complete livelihood was still freelancing for the same publication house. So I was pretty much working full time, but I was a freelancer. But I was getting work every single day, if not more than what I was when I was full time, and that was my complete livelihood. And then in April 2022, I went to a pro-life party for a charity that's run by young people called Abortion Resistance. It's a really wonderful charity. I believe it's, mainly like 18 to 35-year-olds trying to educate young adults about the pro-life movement and about abortion in general. And I went to their launch party and with my sister, and we got a photo in front of their kind of backdrop. And their backdrop is a smiley face with two X's on the eyes. Like there's really nothing that's offensive in that backdrop. It's an emoji. And my sister and I posed in front of it. And we were in nice dresses, so I wanted to share it. I put it up on my Instagram at the time, which was private and personal, so not attached to my work. However, a lot of almost all of the magazines and journalists, editors followed me on like a personal capacity. Shared it with the caption, standing up against the biggest form of discrimination. And I included abortion resistance, obviously, because that was the party I was at. And at that time, I think I had also shared on my stories, which is a 24-hour live cycle on your social media, Isabel Vaughan Spruce's story too, because I really was saying, whatever your views are on abortion, this cannot be what we're accepting in Britain today, that people are being arrested for their personal prayers, silent, imperceptible prayers. And that did, of course, raise a few questions with some of my friends who, they found it difficult that I would be supporting a woman who, does vigils and things outside abortion centres. Anyway, when I posted that one photo from the abortion resistance party, I just noticed probably within an hour, about 100 or 150 people just had unfollowed me. I could just see my numbers had dropped. And I thought this is strange, but of course I wasn't necessarily expecting such a dramatic decrease in people following me. Especially it wasn't a graphic image. There was nothing to do. There was no. I've never shared any imagery that could be taken as offensive or upsetting. I'm aware that some of the people who I know have had abortions in the past, and I wouldn't want to do that. So then I just noticed that no one was getting in touch with me anymore. These were people that I was in touch with every single day for a work capacity. I did notice that they had all unfollowed me, so I didn't have that connection anymore on social media. Because I was quite new to my faith, I was quite new to I don't know, like conservative or traditional views. I didn't really have a community or anyone to turn to, so I very much just accepted that. I didn't push back. I didn't, get in touch and say, "Hello, why is no one getting back to me?" It was very obvious what had happened because I went from receiving about 25 emails a day from these editors to zero. I didn't do anything about it. I didn't know who to turn to. So I didn't. However, 6 months later, I received an email from a colleague, probably my kind of closest friend at this organization. And the email had said, I'll just read it to you. I did share it with Edmund as well, but just so you're aware, because this just helped to confirm what I knew had happened. So she said, "Hi Delphine, I hope you're well, enjoying the Christmas break. I wanted to email before the end of the year because we haven't spoken in ages and it's such a shame. I meant to explain it in person, but we had to stop working with you earlier this year because some of the posts on your Instagram went against what the Hearst brand stand for. I thought I'd get a chance to speak to you about it properly at leaving drinks or something, but it never happened, and then work got really busy. I'm really sorry I never addressed it. It honestly wasn't intentional. I've just been rubbish." And then it just went on to say, "I'd love to catch up," which actually never happened. But I think that line where she obviously said, we had to stop working with you because some of the posts on your Instagram went against what our brands stand for. And that for me was just very much realizing, okay, this was definitely a viewpoint, viewpoint diversity discrimination. They didn't agree with with what I said. And I think since then, I've educated myself a little bit more in terms of the Equality Act and protected characteristics. And I have really realized that I just can't see how, my private post of myself at a pro-life party violated their mission or sorry, that's my cat. Or touched on, the work or my ability to provide top quality work for them. So I think for that, it just really was frustrating for me because obviously the magazine industry really boasts a commitment to diversity, and that included members of staff having to do, mandatory inclusivity training. So for me, it just made me realize, we obviously are living in a time when we think we're free to believe what we want, but that's only if those beliefs are, either completely privately homed in our own minds, not shared on social media, or if they align with, the current pop culture narratives. So for me, it was really an experience of social ostracization and obviously career punishment. And because I didn't know anything about the Equality Act or about what I was protected for, I didn't push back. So I didn't challenge it. And obviously they got away with it. I did do one of those, oh, what's it called? Sorry, one second. It's when I got I think they're called freedom of information. No, not freedom of information. Because I
Subject
tried
access request.
subject access request. Yes, I did do a subject access request and nothing fruitful came back for that. I don't know if that's, you know, yeah, nothing came back from that because I was hoping that there might be a message of someone say, just let's not work with Delphine because there was clearly a group decision where, people were told not to work with me anymore because I was working with about 12 different editors. So for all 12 to just suddenly stop working with me was very bizarre. But as I said, a little bit on their defense, I never challenged it. I didn't even email to say hello, um, because emotionally it just took a real toll on me, and I just found it very isolating. And I didn't know you guys existed. I didn't know a lot of people existed. So yeah, that is mainly the experience.
Mm. Thank you. I mean, this is actually all quite recent, isn't it? Because this happened 2022, from what you're saying, and it's now
April 2022,
2025.
yeah.
So you could actually still challenge it if you wished, but anyway,
Yeah,
was
I,
a
I
part.
think from a conscience point of view, so the one woman who did have the decency to message me that, I do care about her in a personal capacity, and I would be very worried that she would get thrown under the bus for saying that, because I'm sure she wasn't meant to say anything. I'm sure they were all told to not say anything to kind of protect the company. Um, so yeah, I don't necessarily know what the right thing to do is, but I think it's good to share the experience. I have talked about it at Christian young adult conferences and things with a little bit more of this is what I would have done if this happened to me now.
Mm,
And just to encourage people, I think a lot of people self-censor now because they're afraid, and I don't want my story to discourage people further. Um, I just want people to know their rights and
mm,
to be able to, because I'm sure had I challenged it at the time, they would have been too scared to actually blacklist me or whatever it is that
mm,
happened to me. Um, I just think that people don't really know what to say to HR, or what rights they have.
mm. Um, just a few questions, and then I'm going to go around and ask the commissioners to come in with their questions, and I'm going to follow the order that I've got on my screen, everybody. So which is Nina, Robert, and then Paul. But Delphine, Hearst is a very big organisation, isn't it? So can I just ask which magazines were you actually working with?
Yeah. So, is that information going to be public?
No, no, no. This won't be public. As I say, we will obviously refer to your case in the report because it's well, we need as much evidence as we can get, but we will preserve your anonymity. But I'm just wanting to get a sort of picture of who it was that actually, stopped
Yeah,
you
so
from.
I mean, I was working for the commercial branded team at the time, so it's called branded content. So I was actually across a lot of titles. So I was working for everyone from Cosmopolitan to Good Housekeeping to Elle magazine, that's ELLE. Um, who else was I working for at the time? It's basically all of their titles. I was across all of them, but
Mm,
those are the main ones.
okay. When you were actually on the staff, where, was it an editorial role you had, or a journalistic role, or what were you specializing in?
So my final 3 years, I was actually branded content lead. So I was working on branded content, which is commercial content. So it's, for example, Dyson want to do a big article in Cosmopolitan. So we come up with ideas that work for the Cosmopolitan audience, but that can also highlight Dyson. And before that, I was a features writer. So writing about anything from relationships to lifestyle, travel, culture, anything like that.
Hmm. And your Christian faith hadn't been seen as a problem. You said you were asked to write their Easter newsletter, so there wasn't an issue with your being a Christian up until that time.
No, I think my kind of Christianity was taken quite well when it, didn't necessarily come with any other um, convictions or values. I think when it was just, I'm a Christian, it was taken very much like, oh, that's sweet, that's nice. But, obviously the moment that you start to, explain what that could involve, so pro-life views, or, as I said, I turned down a story about IVF. I turned down a story about there was a quite a strange kind of sexuality story about I don't know, a pansexual, asexual person that I didn't want to cover either. So I think when it was just that I was Christian, that was fine. Like this organization, they used to do, celebrations for Ramadan and Eid, and they were very trying to be inclusive. But it definitely was the pro-life stance that threw them over the edge.
Okay. And you say that the email that was subsequently sent to you said that some of your posts, the content had caused some upset. Now, my understanding from what you said so far is that there's only one post. Um, can you just clarify that? Was there one post, or were there actually several posts that you're putting up?
Yeah, so that was the one post which was like the permanent post, which means that people are more likely to see it. The other ones that she's referring to would have been ones that I was talking about Isabel von Spruce's case on my, it's called Instagram Stories, which is like a 24-hour cycle. So it just lasts on your profile for 24 hours, but people can see it. And I think at that point I had shared a couple of posts from like live action. Um, just because for me, I think I had this realization that I thought, gosh, if everyone actually understood what abortion was, surely they would also be against it because I was quite on the fence to it before I knew much about it. You know, having that opinion of I would never myself, but I'd never judge anyone else, which is a very common opinion, I think. So I did share a few things, and I was always very mindful to not share anything that was too graphic or anything like that, or that was graphic at all. I would try to share things which were just words or yeah. So sometimes I think I would have shared stories from live action from Lila Rose's charity, just that maybe explain more about what abortion was. So that's what she's referring to.
Mm. And there was this kind of mass unfollowing of you
Yeah,
from
that
the
was after the permanent post. That was after the I shared that with Edmund yesterday. So that was just the one post.
right. I have to confess I know very little about social media and how it works, but it seems
No
to be
problem.
quite strange that so many people would unfollow you all in one go at the same time. But
It does, which is why I do wonder if that's why I really wanted that subject access request to see if there was a point where, there was a message on Slack or on Teams or an email. It was like, FYI, we're not going to work with Delphine anymore. I'm sure it exists somewhere. I just don't have access to it, sadly. So,
okay, and I'm just going to ask one more question. You referred to um, what you had posted seemed to be in conflict with what the Hearst brand stands for.
yeah.
Do we actually have any clarity? Is it anywhere in writing? Is there a mission statement for Hearst brand or whatever?
Not that I know of, but I wouldn't be surprised in the sense of all women's magazines. It's just a very underlying knowledge that obviously they stand for women's rights.
Hmm.
And I suppose that includes reproductive rights. I must admit that this was a real thing of ignorance for me because I remember this is completely aside from this because I didn't necessarily have any issues with um, Marie Claire, but I was working with Marie Claire, and my second day they asked me to go to a women's rights march with them. And I honestly just didn't realize it was a pro-choice march. I thought it was, against domestic violence or for equal pay.
Hmm.
So there was a real ignorance on my part in terms of what, how big this kind of movement is. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if there is a mission statement somewhere, like if they say they stand for women and women's rights. And obviously that sounds very loving and very good. Um, but yes, definitely encompasses, you know, I had personal people coming talking to me to say you are really coming across very anti-women right now. So I think that's obviously the idea that people got.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Nina if she would like to bring some questions to you, Delphine.
Sure, thanks, Linda. Morning, Delphine. Thanks for being here, and I'm sorry about your story. It's we're familiar with quite a lot of these, but it doesn't make it any less painful. To be cancelled, to be ostracized, and also to lose work. And I'm just wondering. how you feel about any sort of ongoing consequences from this cancellation. Like, do you have a sense that, even though obviously you don't have access to the presumable discussion, we're not working with Delphine anymore, do you have any more sense that there are certain paths that are closed off to you? And maybe if you could speak a little bit about your concerns about employability, if that's all right.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I just completely left that industry. So I had just felt, I think it knocked my confidence so much. As I say, I was in editorial for about 10 years and then branded content for about 2, 3 years. And I don't know if it was the correct way to react, but I just basically was like, okay, I think that's completely the door closed on that. So I did really just leave journalism in a sense. There are still some journalists who do talk to me. In fact, there was one from Evening Standard who asked me for an interview about Catholicism and the rise of Catholicism in Gen Z and millennials. And I gave her a very small kind of version of the story that I wasn't, because she asked me, you're still working at Hearst? And I said, oh, not really. I just don't think it, aligns with my values and I'm not really able to. And even though herself, she was raised Catholic, she's very pro-choice and very pro things like same-sex marriage and things. So she said to me, I completely disagree with you with everything that you kind of believe. However, I don't think that was right. So I am hopeful that there are obviously some people, there are some journalists. I can't just brand the whole industry. But I think just on a personal level, it took a real toll on my confidence. It took a toll on my just general well-being because I also lost a lot of friends. I mean, a lot of these journalists were very close friends of mine, and they either, for use of a modern word, ghosted me. So just, that was the thing which I think was the strangest thing, is it just went from normal everyday contact, normal socializing, normal, reaching out to people, to nothing, to just being as if I didn't exist. And again, I have not tried to reach out to them to see. It'd be really fascinating if I decide to pitch a story to them and see what they were to do. And maybe now that I'm a bit more on my feet, I could do something like that. But the impression I got was very much I wasn't welcome, especially not for Hearst. But I also felt maybe some of the other magazines that I used to freelance for and have contacts in. Um, I got a similar impression from some of them as well. I did have a message from an old journalist colleague. This was actually probably during, I think I must have shared something about COVID or something, and she had messaged me saying it's really irresponsible what you're sharing because people know you as a journalist and you shouldn't really be talking about stuff which is anti-mainstream media. It's irresponsible of you. So there was already a little bit of tension there, and I think I didn't really understand, my kind of fundamental freedoms to freedom of expression or freedom of speech. And as I said, at the time, so my Instagram now is completely open, so anyone can see it. But at the time, it was private. You had to request to follow me. So I didn't really think there was conflict in terms of, because obviously I was working with big brands. So I was working with Unilever, Dyson, various big brands, but they wouldn't really have been able to see anything I was showing personally unless they followed me and I wasn't aware that they were. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I mean, very sympathetic on the ghosting front. This is a unfortunate feature of contemporary life, it seems. Yeah, and just to point of clarification on your sort of unwillingness, let's say, or your decision, your searching your conscience, as to not pursuing any legal action. I appreciate you don't want to get the one person who did say, you know, anything in trouble, and I'm not sure that they necessarily would be if you did pursue a case. I mean, I appreciate it's maybe more difficult if you're freelance because you don't have the same kind of contract. um but just to clarify, you've absolutely decided that you're not going to pursue this under freedom of belief or anything like that. Like, this is, you've made your mind up on that front.
For now, I I work with quite a few lawyers now, and when I talk to them about it, they didn't really necessarily think that there'd be a big case. I think that someone had advised me that, maybe, well, that I would probably lose and maybe just get £3,000 or something like that. And I think the emotional toll I didn't think was worth it. Um, I think because I don't really have enough evidence. I'll be honest, I think maybe it's still a bit too raw, or because I still haven't quite established exactly what I want to do with my career, I feel a little bit vulnerable in the sense of I don't want to get blacklisted more in case I do end up wanting to go into creative industry again. Which I know is a cop out, and I have been really conflicted about kind of what is prudence and what's just cowardice. So I am, yeah, uh, I'm leaning on, wanting to tell you guys so that you know my story, but yeah, I don't have a decision on that firmly yet.
Yeah, no, I mean that thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, just final question for me for now. You said in your reversion or your, becoming sort of more actively Catholic and over the years, sort of 2019 and onwards, do you feel like you have the support of a religious community now, more now? Obviously, you're talking about lawyers and you're working for Christian groups, but do you feel more that you have let's say a group of people who are aligned with your position and can offer you sort of personal support?
Yeah, absolutely do. I've got a good, strong church community now, although my parish priest is leaving. Very sad about that. So I go to St. Bede's, and Father Marcus Holden's been a really good spiritual director and father for me. And then, yeah, I think, learning about organizations like ADF International, ADF UK, talking to people in those kind of circles has been really good for me to understand, okay, there are other people who are, hold Christian or conservative or pro-life beliefs. Also, I now know Isabel von Spruce. So I think, knowing the people from March for Life and the abortion resistance young adult community. So yeah, I definitely feel that there's more. I still feel I have so much to learn to really be able to arm myself. I have, as I said, shared my story of some young adult groups. Like I went to the Society of Protection of Unborn Children youth conference and shared my story. So yes, definitely feel more equipped now, because back then I did not know one person who I thought I could talk to, and as I said, sadly, I just feel I really accepted the censorship and the cancellation, and I just took it very quietly and walked away without causing any issues to them or any fuss.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's it from me for now.
Thanks, Nina.
Thank you, Nina. Robert, let's come to you.
Thank you, Linda. Good morning, Delphine. Thank you very much for giving your time this morning to us. Can I just ask for a point of clarity first? It's very clear you said that you wanted to preserve your anonymity, especially with regards to the names of the magazines and your own name, of course. But the Hearst Group, as a point of reference, are we allowed to make that public or?
Um, is that something that I can let you guys know? I can,
Absolutely.
yeah,
You decide in your own time and get back to Edmund about that. I just wanted some clarity on that.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
can I just ask you, this Easter newsletter, which was sent out, I think you said to 10,000 members of staff, is that right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I'm just curious to know, given that no offense apparently was taken to that, because you didn't get any complaints, what did you actually say in that newsletter? Because we know what the Easter story is, but some people would find that offensive if you're saying, this is an exclusive claim about how you get forgiven, etc., etc. What did you actually say in that? Can you just give us a summary?
Yes. Oh, I wonder if I can find it actually. I might have it somewhere. Yeah, I think I very much was like, this Easter season, people, I mean, this is me paraphrasing. People think of it as springtime and chicks and rabbits and chocolates and, bank holidays. But what it means for us as Christians, it's about the fact that Jesus Christ was resurrected for us and died for us. And I imagine I probably made it quite universal in the sense of I don't think I maybe went too much into like sin or anything like that. I think I tried to make it as warm and fuzzy as possible while still sticking to the salvation history and salvation story. So I imagine that it was written very much as like as a Christian. And at this point, I think I was very in that mindset of the inclusivity, belonging, diversity. Let's talk about it in a very nice, open, tolerant way. So I can't imagine there was anything that would have offended, even though we had a lot of Muslim colleagues and I assume that that was phrased in very much a way of, as a Christian, this is what we believe, rather than this is what happened. So I
Right.
imagine that's why it didn't cause any upset or offense. And
Right.
actually,
Thank
at
you
the
for that.
time, I was also encouraged to start a Christian society for Hurst because Hurst had like an Islam society. So I was about to start that, and I had set up the Slack group. So yeah, there was definitely an openness, and I think that's why for me it was such a shock when what happened, just because I thought, oh, I was lured into this false security of my Christianity being very welcomed and accepted.
When you say that you were encouraged to set up a Christian group, the
Mhm.
person who's encouraged you, what role did they have
I
in
think they
the
were in
company?
HR. So we used to have a lot
Right.
of different events. So for example, like I said, Eid, we had like a Middle Eastern kind of food spread and things like that. So I believe it was one of the, I don't know what her exact title was, but we had quite a few people in HR who were in charge of culture. So it was very much to encourage that. But it was just a verbal encouragement. I don't think I've got that written
Wow.
down anywhere.
Of the people who followed you on Instagram within the journalist industry, in fact, were any of those people, as far as you're aware, claiming to be Christian?
Two of them, yes. I think those two still follow me. I'm just checking. But I tend to know people who are Christian in the journalism industry, but say that they would never comment on same sex, they would never comment on trans, they'd never comment on abortion. So I think that I've realized that yes, you can be Christian. These organizations just don't talk about those topics.
I see. And you said that when you posted this picture, about I think 100 people unfollowed you within a very short space of time. Was that within 24 hours
Yeah.
or what? Right. And how many people were following you up until that point altogether on Instagram?
I Unfortunately, I don't have the number. It's just that I just knew the people who did follow me, like the specific magazines that followed me. Um, like Cosmopolitan, I know followed me and then unfollowed me. I know that I'm just trying to see, like the editor of Elle followed me and unfollowed me. Um, I'm just seeing. Yeah, some of them still do follow me, but there was very much like a lot of the video editors, picture editors, a lot of different roles just unfollowed me.
And can you just give us, if it's possible, just an approximate number of people who were following you? Are we talking in the hundreds, over 1,000, or I've got no idea, no idea.
As
Sorry.
in general,
Yeah,
or from the
Instagram.
journalism, uh,
In general,
in general, probably at that time about like 3,000.
and how many were from the journalist industry?
I would say probably about 110, 120.
Right. Okay. And you've spoken about the fact that emotionally it took a big toll on you. Can you just give us some sense of I mean, the financial impact must have been quite significant. Would you care to say something about that?
Yeah. So that happened April 2022. As I said, I'd been working pretty solidly. Yeah, I was working solidly, earning actually more than I was in a full-time job until then. And then it went from earning absolutely nothing. So that was from April 2022. And then I didn't get employment again until November 2022. And that was with a Christian legal advocacy organization. So, and that was really by God's providence that I met them. But yeah, so that was a good few months. I was able to do some freelance work for brands outside. I did a job for Citroen, for example, the car brand, and I think that's probably why I was a bit nervous to know if I want to bring any of this out. There definitely is a fear that if my name comes out, if the Hearst name comes out, if any of the magazine names come out, and it gets connected back to me, that the blacklisting could be even more severe and even bigger. And obviously that's worth saying because that is where the fear is rooted in. But yeah, so the financial impact, wasn't great emotionally. My mental health, I think I just felt very scared to say anything, scared to share, scared to create. Before then I was always a very expressive person. I think I became very withdrawn in all aspects of my life. I just didn't really want to speak out about anything, share my opinions, share anything on social media, share anything in real life. I think I just became very a muted version of myself for a good while
Mm.
and just very underconfident. I think I felt like an imposter everywhere. So even as I was entering into these more Christian or conservative circles, I still just had no confidence.
No, that makes complete sense. We do understand that. Um, Someone said to you, we had to stop working with you. Who in the industry, what role did that person have in relation to
So
your work?
that person had the same role that I had had. So we were called branded content leads, and there was four of us at the time. And I had chosen to take voluntary redundancy because there was only going to be space for three. And I decided it worked out for me to no longer work there because I'd already worried it was in conflict with my faith anyway. But I had said, I will take that voluntary redundancy so you others are safe. I will go for it, but are you guys going to still give me work? And they were like, absolutely. Like it was very just verbally and friendly, in that way, because obviously it meant they could relax, that they didn't have to worry. Because if none of us had put our names forward, someone would have been chosen. So she was the same level as me, but when I had taken that redundancy and I was a freelancer, she was commissioning me. So she was very much one of my biggest commissioners, who was giving me work.
Right. I just have a couple of more questions. You said that you got invited to a women's rights march. Did you actually, it sounded as though you possibly did go, even though you felt uncomfortable. Did you actually go to it?
I did go,
Not
yeah.
knowing, because you didn't know in advance exactly what was. So what happened on the march?
I'm trying to think of that date because this was actually before my conversion back to Christianity. So
Oh,
that would have been maybe 2018. I think it would have been 2018. And I have no problem with this magazine in the sense of I didn't have an experience with them and they're a different publishing house. But yeah, it was just my second day. They said we're all going out as a magazine house to the Women's March, and I was okay. So I do have pictures of me on this march with these placards that say "Don't turn back the clocks" or something ridiculous. And as I say, I'm open about it. I used to write all these very anti-Trump articles that were just like, Trump hates women and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I was completely in that world, but yes, I was very ignorant to what that actually meant. I think I thought it was just I always thought women's rights were against like violence against women, trafficking, things like that. I didn't really make the connection that it was a pro-choice, pro-life, just because I'd never been necessarily involved in either community. But yeah, I mean, that's another story, but that's just the environment of women's magazines. You really get trained in that kind of eye of post-sexual revolution, feminism, and very, very pro-choice. That just seems to be you need to subscribe to quite a few of these in order to be accepted and to get by,
but
really.
given that this march was before your conversion, are you saying you didn't feel uncomfortable at the time attending it?
Oh, I did. Yeah, I did. I remember telling my mum, I was like, I think I attended a pro-choice march. No, I did feel uncomfortable, but I didn't feel forced. I wasn't forced in the sense of I just
Right.
was ignorant and I went along, but everyone in the team was asked to go. But I didn't at that time. It's not like I said I can't go because of my beliefs. So
But what I'm trying to understand is if it's before your conversion,
yeah.
were you already becoming aligned with the pro-life perspective, even though you hadn't come back to Christianity, as it were, yet? Trying to understand.
Yeah, at that time, I just very much had the opinion that I thought I would never have an abortion, but I wasn't judgmental about it. I honestly really didn't know what abortion was. I didn't
No,
know
no.
how it happened. I didn't know the actual um, procedure or anything. So I was very
Mm.
ignorant.
My
So
final
I wasn't
question, very
there happily. I just was there.
no, no. My final question is: you said there was an Islam group for journalists. Is
Yeah.
there anything that stood out to you, given that there's a perception among conservative-minded Christians that Islam is treated rather differently in society to Christianity? Would you express any thoughts or comments about anything that anything that got highlighted by that group and how it might have perhaps differed from a Christian group?
Yeah, so it was a group for the entire organization. So not everyone was journalists. You had some salespeople, admin, operations, things like that. But I just remember, again, I didn't think much of it at the time. But, you know, like I said, we had big celebrations for Eid. There were special concessions for Ramadan, like for Muslims, for example. I didn't really think anything of it. However, when I was starting to think, oh, well, on Good Friday, maybe we should do, you know, have hot cross buns for everyone or Easter eggs, you know, like there were just things that um but I can't say if that just wasn't prioritized because there was no one driving it, because I was invited to drive that kind of Christian side of things, but definitely the Muslim group were very active. So you were just very aware, but also in a very nice way. I mean, the food was delicious and we all got to enjoy it. So I didn't necessarily feel like that was pushed over Christianity. It just felt that it had a bigger driving force, a stronger driving force.
Thank you so much, Delphine, for your questions. Much appreciated. Back to Linda.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Robert.
Robert. Paul, can I invite you to bring your questions, please? You need to unmute, Paul.
You can now see how tech savvy I am, and why most of my trials collapse in the first 3 minutes because I can't even turn the machine on. Um, I'm going to ask some questions because I think most of them have been asked, but I think I'm going to sort of go down the Linda route of sort of going on about this social media. I just want to just get a understand it. I don't think I'll be too long. Um, what was the actual post that got them so worked up? It was what was this permanent main post that you said? What was
Yeah,
it?
I mean, it's really ridiculous. I can share my screen and show you. Um, and you'll see why, because you probably can tell I'm a very cautious person. So I wasn't trying to share anything that I thought would be controversial. So I was just loading, I'm just getting it so I can show you what I sent Edmund yesterday.
Yeah, I did send it round.
Yeah, you did, and
No, it's okay. It's coming up. Should come
Oh,
up.
okay. Oh, can I share?
Yeah,
yes,
Oh,
you
yeah.
can
you
share.
can.
Okay,
He has
perfect.
the skill
I mean,
to
yeah,
do it.
it's literally this. As I said, I was also sharing some stuff on my stories, especially about
Okay,
the
so
ADF International.
let me understand this. Who you're on the left, looking very well dressed,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And who's that lady on the right?
That's my sister.
Okay, and I'm losing this. Okay, so you're there with your sister with some smiley faces as the background, and at
Mhm.
the top it says St. Ethelberger's
Oh,
Center.
yeah. And this, I
And
think, this is what really got them. Is this caption?
okay,
Obviously, people would have then gone into abortion resistance, which they're obviously a lot more vocal about abortion and things, but they would have seen that I was basically saying that abortion is the worst form of discrimination, and that I think would have really rubbed them the wrong way, because that's why it's like, well, you go against our values, and I had a lot of people come to me say, this is really anti-women of you. How are you against women's rights? This is really archaic, this blah blah. Like, so yeah, that it was
but
much more probably the caption than the picture.
it's very modestly expressed in a way,
Very,
isn't it?
very
Yeah,
cautiously
yeah.
expressed, yeah. Mhm.
And you said this was a. I just need to understand this. And this is a private group, you said, yes?
No, so this is Instagram. So
Right. Is
Instagram,
that everybody?
yeah, but at the time, my profile was private, so it was only the people who followed me.
Yeah, that's where I was going. So
Yeah,
you have to say, I want to, it's not public in a sense. You're not shouting to the world. People have actually got to say, I want to know about Delphine. I want to follow her. And you've got to say, yeah, I like you, and you can,
yeah,
basically.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not public actually, on one level, is it?
No, but I suppose a lot of journalists were following me. A lot of people in that industry were following me.
Okay.
But Yeah.
And I'm going to ask another moronic question, okay?
That's all.
Okay, but I'm pursuing this. Um, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, I know, I think I would call it pub talk. In my day, you'd be in a pub and you would say something, maybe stupid, maybe off cuff, but they'd only be your four mates listening to you, and that would be it. But this form of pub talk goes on a social media screen, and you don't necessarily think it out. You sometimes just react or express yourself to someone else's comment, but it's for the whole world. It sort of permanently gets jabbed out there. And do people understand it's also pub talk? Or is that sort of you seem to get people get seem to get so much blame for an off-the-cuff remark or thoughtless forwarding or whatever, you know? Would you say that's sort of an analysis that's accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that is the same analogy in the sense of I know that employers now go down your social media, and if you said something 3 years ago that they feel could be misconstrued as whatever you want to call it, they will hold that against you. So I do believe that because it's like you can actually screenshot it, it's tangible out there, that people very much take it as an opinion that you have formed and that is a forever opinion of yours.
Yeah,
It's really seen as a stream of consciousness or sharing a thought. It's very much, I think people use social media as in a tribalistic nature, where you're saying, which side you stand on and where you stand on. And I mean, something that might be worth sharing with you all for more context is that I run a charity and it's a befriending charity for older people and it's a secular charity and there's nothing in there that would offend anyone. We help older people, we connect people with dog owners in their local community. Like it wouldn't offend anyone. However, I have at times been worried to be attached to it in case that was going to jeopardize the charity.
yeah.
Because, more and more, if people hear my story or they know my name, so I think that's why I come at this with such caution because I just feel like there could be
But you're at the
consequences
place
beyond
now
me.
of total protection. You've got about 50 lawyers round you where you're working at the moment. So, um,
True.
and then finally, just Robert touched on this, the Islamic group, and you mentioned all the good food and Eid celebrations and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, many social issues, Muslims are fairly close to Christians. I mean, Muslims aren't particularly keen on abortion, and a lot of them have been involved in anti-abortion movements, and they're
Yeah.
probably not too keen on same-sex marriages, if that came to the fore. Are they just totally silent on these issues? Is it all just sort of, if I could put it, a bland Christianity and a bland Islam, or were they allowed to actually, did you ever notice anything, talk the Muslim way of life or separation of men and women even, or something like that?
Not at all in this industry. So, for example, I mean, other things that happened at Hearst, for example, June, we were all automatically given pride flags in our email signatures, which I pushed against and I got mine removed. But of course, and there was no problem with me removing it, but I felt it was quite obvious I was the only person in the organization who didn't have that. And they would do Hearst Pride. There'd be groups that would go to the Pride parade together. But on that point, no, none of the Muslims in that company were very opinionated about anything of those kind of convictions. In fact, one of the main drivers of the Islam group was a lesbian and she was married to a woman or in a partnership with a woman. So it was quite a liberal group, I suppose, which I think that industry just is. You just have a lot of.
Yeah, and actually, just to say, it's almost impossible for a Christian to work in it, what you're saying, because it's so overwhelming. You get sort of pride flags on your response immediately entered into, and I'm sure there are lots of other little things that you have to brush off because it's just a constant challenge, isn't it? And your views aren't seen as some sort of private or whatever or religious, that you're literally seen as sort of defying civilized norms or something. Would that be, you know?
Yeah, it was definitely getting to a point for me. I mean, again, this wasn't made a big fuss of, but I also chose to not have my pronouns on my email because people wanted me to be Delphine Chui, bracket, she, her, and I refused to do that because I have a female name. But that also was just kind of from a social perspective. I did worry, people are going to start seeing I don't have the pride flag in my email, I don't have my pronouns. So yeah, it does become challenging. I think most people just go along with it because it's easier. For me, I think it was really piling up and becoming obvious that I just didn't feel I could work there anymore on a full-time basis, which is why, taking the voluntary redundancy was a bit of a gift to me. But in some ways, I'm sad I left the industry because I think if I was more strategic about it, I could have maybe done a bit of good staying there, and being able to give some other opinions, because you just don't realize the bubble that you're in and how normalized all of this feels and becomes, and you don't even question it.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. I mean, yeah, well, I know you can. I think just personally, I'm slightly split on whether you do keep your head down and be so cautious, or whether you can sort of, especially with 100 lawyers working with you, you can actually probably shout a bit louder. But I hear what you're saying, and I'm sure these industries are quite brutal as well in their sort of exclusions in the name of
Yeah,
inclusion.
I mean, I did get some advice with some of the lawyers that I was working with, especially those that specialize in employment law. And I think it was really unfortunate that the subject access request came back completely fruitless. And yeah, I just don't really know how necessarily impactful it will be, but I'm very happy to stay in touch with Edmund and see what
Yeah,
routes you think. But for now, I feel most at peace just sharing my story with you guys on a private basis,
yeah,
but happy
yeah.
to get in touch.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone.
Um, I'll just round up and see if anybody has any more questions. Something that did just occur to me, Delphine, was have you thought of writing for the Christian media at all? Because I mean, uh, it's a different sort of industry, but it's quite large. Have you explored that? Have you?
Yeah, I think, as I said, I think my initial response was very much to just run away from that whole part of myself and that part of my life. Like, got to a point where I couldn't even write. I had like a real block on doing anything creative, and it caused me a lot of anxiety. Now I'm opening up a little bit more. So I've been writing for a couple of the like more Christian or conservative women's magazines like Verily and Evie. Their titles that are kind of, they're trying to be anti that industry while still giving women something. And I would love to write for more Christian media, but that definitely, yeah, I think I would really like to do that. I think my confidence is coming back, and as I say, I do try to share my story with uh, friendly audiences. I think, I've not really necessarily put myself in a place to be in front of a hostile audience yet. But yeah, no, Linda, I definitely would. It's just taking me a bit more time to get that confidence back.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. Um, Anybody else? Nina, Robert, Paul, do you have any more questions to ask at all?
Just a couple of brief questions, if I may.
Okay.
Thank you, Linda. You said that people put the pride flag and the personal pronouns at the end of the emails. That's for the whole Hearst group, is it? The whole,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
the, I
So was
believe
it
so.
was it something you were, because you haven't spoken about it as a requirement, so was it just simply something you were encouraged to do? Would that be the right way to describe it?
Yes, it was definitely encouraged, and I think no one else necessarily questioned it. I didn't get in trouble formally for not doing it. And I have helped a few other people I know who have had the pride flag just appear in their email signature to push back against it. I think probably for that, my only concern was the kind of social ostracization of like the obviousness that I was the only one without it. But the reason I didn't raise that in this kind of inquiry is because I wasn't made to feel that was something I wasn't allowed to do. However, don't forget that that was back in 2022, and I feel like now it might be a requirement. I'm not sure on that, but I feel like now it's almost expected that everyone does pronouns and pride flag during June.
But you said there were a couple of other people you helped who didn't want.
Not
They
in
were
Hurst.
not in Hurst.
Not
I
in
see.
Hurst,
Okay.
sorry. And that's been like
Yeah.
this year, for example, people just asked me, what can I say? And that's because I've learned things like compelled speech and other various terms that really scare HR if you mention them to them.
And my other question, very briefly, is the Pride March you mentioned. Was that just something that you and fellow journalists were invited to? There was no pressure of any kind. Was it just we encourage you to join the fight on the streets? What I mean, can you just give us some sense of what the invitation was like, how it was worded?
Just like the Muslim group, there was also a Hurst Pride social group that was, just like they wanted me to start a Christianity group. And they were just very much like, oh, on this day, we're all going to dress up really colorfully and you're welcome to come take a group shot with us in the office. So it was very much like a social group within Hurst, which they encouraged. And I assume that, because obviously they had changed all the signatures to the pride flag and things. So it was very celebrated during June. Lots of rainbows everywhere.
But it wasn't a march on the street, though. Or was it?
Yes, so they all, I think the march happens on a weekend. So I think that group were like, we're all going to go together as like colleagues and friends, like invite your friends and family and we'll all go together on the weekend. I didn't go. But yeah, it was just like an open invitation with the basis of, I think, starting at the Hearst office or having it as a kind of point of reference for the march.
But the celebration you just mentioned a few moments ago at the office, the Pride celebration, was that to do with the Muslim group or just broadly,
No,
for everybody?
I think there was a Hearst Pride group.
Right.
And I assume it was, I'm trying to remember, I think it must have been the Friday before the march. I think the march happens on a Saturday. So I think on the Friday they were like, let's all dress up and wear glitter and all these things and come to the office. And it was very welcomed and accepted to, come in looking very festively for Pride.
Okay, I have no more questions. Thank you so much, Delphine, for your time. Back to
Thanks,
Linda.
Robert. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Robert. Delphine, just let me say thank you again for just coming and joining us today. I